Hey, welcome back to the backup issue. I'm Miranda, aka DinoMightyMiranda from TikTok, your friendly neighborhood amateur Batman historian. With me is the wonderful,
Rena, hi. My name is Rena. I'm a rocker free on TikTok. I make way too long content on way too short a platform. Uh,
and we are here to talk about something that we didn't get to in the main recording. Because despite it being, oh my gosh, how long did we end up recording for? 2 hours?
want to say closer to 90 minutes, but that's only when I got the recording. I think we had to cut before that, so probably
Yeah.
closer to 2 hours.
So despite recording for 2 hours, there's some things we still didn't cover. And our topic today is mischaracterizations. Specifically, uh actually, do we want to call it mischaracterizations?
Well, that's what we're here to say today to discuss if it's mixed characterizations. The bizarre episode, which you might want to watch first, was about the difference between mischaracterization and character-like development. And this is us talking about specifically alternate universes that are futures so that we can get into that. So the basic idea is it's one thing to characterize a character differently when they are acting in like their modern incarnation. It's another thing to say this is how a character would develop. And that's the crux of it.
Beautiful. So we are in essence talking about we're mostly talking about characters that are like in some imagined future of themselves, and there's several different shapes that that could take. So for instance, there is of course the hallowed time travel trope, right? You have the character going into the future, and most of the time when they do that, they see a bad future. Would you like to talk about that first?
So the first topic that we're going to discuss is bad futures, right? When the not necessarily bad, but whenever a character time travels to the future, which is usually bad, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Um, I would like to talk about one of my favorite storylines from an overall somewhat mid-run, uh, Titans of Tomorrow. So, for our friends who don't know, Titans of Tomorrow was a Teen Titans storyline. It happened in like the mid 2000s, and it is like that generation Titan team where you have Tim Drake, you have Connell, you have Cassie Sandsmark, Wonder Girl, you have Bart Allen. Garfield Logan is there as like team mentor, which is a mistake, right? And they all jump into the future and they see themselves, but they're evil now.
Why would everyone be evil?
Okay, like it's so like one of the big themes of like that overall run, right, is the fact that like that specific generation of Titans cannot trust the adults. They can't rely on the adults. They can't trust the adults. Like the adults are like will let them down. They'll push them off. They will like neglect their emotional needs. And so instead they turn insular and like turn inward. And then I think Titans of Tomorrow is like kind of the ooh, you shouldn't do that, like warning story, right? Because like they go forwards and they see versions of themselves that have completely rejected all of their mentors, right? The one of one of the I don't want to say it's like dumb because I don't just like calling things dumb, but one of like I think the most pointless things that existed in that Titans run was that for some goddamn reason in like the Titans Tower that they build in San Francisco, they put like a hallway where they've made giant concrete statues of everybody's mentors.
That's that's
Yeah.
it's weird because like there's this impression that the Teen Titans are like, as they say in like often right before Justice League Junior, you know?
Hmm.
Uh and like that's not consistent with any run ever.
But anyway, for some reason, they have a hall of concrete statues. And that's like the first thing that like clues like the Teen Titan team that like something is wrong is they go into like the statues and there's like some randos there. There's like, why is Lex Luthor in here? Right? And then I think it's like and then like some of them are smashed. Like I think the Superman one is like full on smashed and they're like, "Oh, we're the bad guys now, guys."
Which just feels like something they would legitimately do in their own like era, you know?
The Hall of Statues in memory of all the Titans that have died. Like that one at least like I can make sense that kind of fits into the sort of like the ethos of like the Teen Titans as like a group, right? The Hall of Mentors is wild, especially when you remember that it was like Corey and Cyborg that had to build this Titans tower. Like they didn't even have mentors. Why did they think to build this?
Maybe that's the reason why they were like, I assume this is what you guys are doing, you know? Like I assume this is the relationship.
Yeah. So like that's the first thing that like that clues them in that they're secretly evil. Um and then like Tim Drake, who has grown up to be gun-toting Batman, tries to like he's gonna remove Tim's memories so Tim can't make different choices that cause him not to exist. Right? Very classic. Very classic for that kind of story. But he does it by like trying to strap him down to an electric chair. Which is just like, why would you make it look like that? Like you're aware of branding, you're aware of visuals.
Yeah. I mean, apparently not. He was a gun-toting Batman.
Oh, yeah, there's that too. Oh gosh, gun-toting Batman. But like it's the whole point of the story is that they come back and they're shook. They are shooketh, right? They're like, we're never gonna grow up to them because we have something they don't have. The magic of friendship.
But they're a team. Like the evil people are
Oh,
also
the
a
evil
team.
two people are still very much friends. Like they talk about it. Like they're still bros, right? They terrorize people and then they get tacos later. Like they're not, it's not like they stop being friends.
If anything, I'd argue that they seem to be bad influences on each other. Like if one went, you know, like the old expression, like a few bad apples, the finished phrase is a few bad apples spoil the bunch because if you keep bad apples in, they will make other apples bad. So you
Yeah.
have to throw out the bad apples.
Hmm.
Uh, so similarly, if like Tim decides to go off the deep end, at least he won't drag down the rest of the Titans with him. Like it's not like they all independently became evil. They like collectively rejected their mentors.
Well, I mean, it's like they don't independently become evil, but like the weird like overarching theme of like the run is that like you need to be careful of who influences you, which I'm gonna be real, like I do think that that is a product of a book that was written in like 2006, like very much, right? Like that idea that like, oh, teenagers, like have all these bad influences and like they're all going terrible. Like I can see like a 40-year-old man writing that story,
I
right? But
mean,
it's not, I
that's
think,
ever.
very true to the spirits of like teenagers that decide independently that they want to help people.
It's also like, how do I put it? Yeah, like one, the Teen Titans have always been squares. Like they're never, but like I'm trying to explain this concept of like if you tell teenagers to have better influences, they will never listen to you. That's kind of the defining characteristic of teenagers.
It's the entire run was this idea of you have to be careful who's influencing you. And so, like, in the middle of Titans of Tomorrow, there are like Cassie Sandsmark has Ares, who is like, I know, grooming her, right? You have like Connell, who has a very strained relationship with Superman in that era. It's not as strained as like the Young Justice cartoon because like they've never had the Young Justice cartoon relationship.
The Young Justice, can we make a brief segue? Because not segue, but like I need to talk about this.
Go
So
for it.
the I think the main component, the reason why the Young Justice cartoon is like that is because it doesn't have the 90s component, you know?
But it is definitely like a very real theme in like that generation of like Teen Titans that they're fighting with their mentors and so they're having all these bad influences. Connell gets the revelation that Lex Luthor is the other half of his genetic equation, and rather than us getting like, I don't know, it's a weird, It's a long series of weird events.
Another thing, because I gotta shake my hand at Jeff Johns once an episode. Like, Jeff Johns wrote that idea in a letter and essentially got laughed at when it was printed, like back
What?
during the night. Like, you don't know this. Like, Jeff Johns, as a fan, back in the 90s, wrote the idea that, like, maybe you have a Lex Luthor. And the writers are like, that's like an overactive imagination. Like, it's fine. We don't think we're doing that. And then he becomes the writer for Teen Titans and makes it canon.
Oh my God. I didn't know that. No, what?
That's amazing.
Anyway, right. So we have like Titans of Tomorrow where everyone's inexplicably evil. And they're evil because they're all impressionable teenagers and they let the wrong impressions in, which is very funny, right? But they're also like cartoonishly evil. Like, do you know how you know that like that Beast Boy's evil?
Is he red?
He's naked. He's forgone clothing.
So how do you feel about the characterization in it? Does it fit with this idea you have of the Teen Titans?
No, it's okay because it's like I want to talk about Tim Drake because he's my flavor fave, right? But the original evil version of Tim Drake, right? The original gun-toting Batman, right? Tim Drake. That was it was meant as like a personal warning to him about like the dangers of being insular. Um, and it's like it is made very clear that the only reason why he grows up to be that is because all of like the trustworthy adults in his life die. There's like some big event where like Nightwing dies and Batman dies and Alfred dies, and apparently Alfred dying is the thing that sends him over the edge. Like he like says that like when Alfred dies, like that's when he starts carrying the gun.
Which is like kind of consistent. The same thing happens to Bruce.
But it's very much painted as worst case scenario, this is who we grow up to be. And then by the time we get to like the second Titans of Tomorrow, it gets framed more as like it's still somewhat worst case scenario, but it's more like instead of it being a bizarre amount of extremely shitty things have to happen in order to make this occur, it's like, no, you have to be on guard against this. This is always within you. You always have the capability to be this. And then, by the time we get like the gun-toting Batman of Rebirth, right? Who tries to hunt down, I think, like Jonathan Kent. It is very much framed as rather than this being like Tim's worst case scenario, it is something that like Tim always has to actively work at not becoming. No, it's like that's not really consistent with who he is in general.
It becomes comedic. It reminds me of this idea that like whenever Batman doesn't exist, Nightwing gets into like some kind of trouble. Like either he like becomes a Talon or becomes gun-toting Batman, or like even one I remember where he like just gets arrested for like bad stuff. And it's like maybe Jason that would happen to. Like, but like, what about Dick would make him do? I don't think Dick would become particularly important if he didn't have Batman, to be honest.
I mean, I think like the thing with Dick is he would just be another troubled youth in Gotham.
Yeah.
Can I talk real fast about how great like Jason's life apparently turns out? So, there is of course in Flashpoint this I forget what it's called exactly, but it's like Tracy 13 is globetrotting trying to find people to help her save the world because her dad is going to nuke everything in the Flashpoint universe because the Flashpoint universe is terrible, right? And so she's teleporting all around the world to talk to all of these characters, and it's in a way it's kind of an excuse to get to show the audience like what all of these characters that didn't otherwise have appearances in other like places, what they're doing in this universe, right? But one of the people that she and every single place that she goes, she like learns a lesson, right? Because it's not actually about her building a super crew. It's about her, finding the strength within herself to fight her dad. But one of the people that she meets is Jason. And it is a Jason that, like, because Bruce Wayne died when he was a small child, right? Jason never meets Bruce. He never gets taken in, right? He goes down like he's like boosting cars. He gets involved in gang activity. He ends up in a cult at one point, and he dies. And then he miraculously comes back through shenanigans. And then he decides to turn his life around. And he becomes a Catholic priest for some reason. But he's specifically like a Catholic priest in like the middle of, a bad neighborhood in Gotham, and he takes care of people. And he's like found inner peace through that. Right. So you have this very bleak look at what Dick Grayson's symbol of hope becomes without Bruce. And then you have like this very hopeful look at like who Jason as like a self-made man turns himself into on his own terms.
I find that interesting. I thought you were going to talk about the gift and how
Oh, how he
Christian
turns into
also,
like a scumbag from Shark Tank?
yeah,
Well, I think like I'm fine with most future characterizations. I want them to feel either like a little bit earned, right? Like it's as ridiculous as the first Times of Tomorrow is, it at least kind of justifies it as being like, oh, we just let the wrong people influence us, which is it's insulting to teenagers in whole, but at least it's an explanation of how it happened versus the second Titans of Tomorrow, where no, what if we're just really shitty?
I don't have much to say about the gift because I also didn't read that. I've read like the first issue, and that's it.
Oh, I highly recommend The Gift because like the way that I read The Gift is I read it as everybody grows up to be their own imagined worst version of themselves. Like it's to me, it's not an alternate like timeline. I don't think it actually happens. I think it's just it's if you sat down and asked each of those individual characters like what's the worst thing you can imagine? And then that's the gift. Which reading it like that, which it's not the way that it's intended to be read, but it's the way that I choose to read it because artistic intent does have its place. But at the end of the day, it's how the audience interacts with the piece of art that matters more.
Artistic intent is a tool you can use to understand a piece of work, but
Hmm.
like any tool, you don't need it, and it's not always the right tool for the job.
Exactly. Exactly. But like the way that I read it is it's very much like everyone's own imaginary worst version of themselves, which makes it like fascinating because I think there's a very real difference between who a person is and who they think they are. And sort of like reading it as like this is their own imagined worst traits of themselves exacerbated, like that tells me a lot about the characters.
You're the only person I've heard to recommend the gift. Is the
Well, I mean, that makes sense. I don't have good taste. Like,
the only thing about the gift is I'm disappointed how Jordan like gets a bad future. I feel like the Green Lanterns would be partying, you know? They don't like Batman.
yes, he dies in it, right? Yes, he dies. Very sad. But he doesn't die like in anguish. He dies being like, I'm the goddamn Green Lantern.
All right. Is there more to the gift other than do do we want to talk about the murder Batman in that, or is there not much to say other than every Batman must be murderous if it's not Bruce Wayne in a like specifically?
Well, okay, I do think like it's really interesting because it's Tom King that wrote The Gift, correct?
Yes.
Right. So I do find it very interesting that like Tom King chooses to go against like the generally accepted wisdom in like the DC offices that like Dick Grayson is destined to grow up to be Batman for some reason. Right? Like he does like go against it. He does deliberately show a Dick Grayson that inexplicably is Batman. And I say inexplicably because like Batman never existed. He's the original Batman. Why would he choose Batman? What emotional connection does Dick Grayson have to bats? Are bats like the patron symbol of the city? Like,
It wouldn't be surprising.
right. Said shit Gotham, but it just sends you dreams about like Kevlar and bats. Um, so but like he inexplicably grows up to be like Batman, and then Tom King shows you what a bad Batman he would be, right? That he is hardened by the life that he is living. He does not believe in redemption. He does not believe in asking questions. Like it's a lot safer to just kill people and then figure out what they're doing after. And we're not given any reason for why Dick Grayson grows up to be that other than that like the gift sucks. Like the gift universe sucks. But like that is really interesting to me because he's not just gun-toting Batman, he is like Batman as Maniac. And it's like Dick Grayson as a character generally is kind of held up by DC to be like a paragon of good, especially in like the Rebirth era. And I think from like a storytelling perspective, he probably like Tom King probably wrote Dick Grayson to be gun-toting Batman specifically to just highlight just how shitty that timeline is. But I also think that like viewing it as something that's kind of subversive or viewing it as a character study of like Dick Grayson's own worst images of himself, like in the past when we've talked, you've talked about how one of the things that you really enjoy about Elseworlds is for the character study of them,
Yep.
right? Like what you can learn about a character by placing them in a new context. And that's kind of what I viewed the gift. And so like I'm not angry about any of like the quote unquote like mischaracterizations in it because I think that it tells me a lot about who they are in their existing context.
I think that like my one issue with gun-toting Batman is like there's a lot of lethal people like Huntress kills, right? Or has killed in the past, and there's a lot of lethal superheroes, and they still don't use guns. That's a nitpick. But like I
Yeah.
just don't get why consistently like you can kill people with shurikens, it's fine, you know?
I think it's because of like the symbolism of the gun within like Batman lore,
Yeah,
right?
I get that. And sometimes that makes sense. And sometimes it doesn't. Like I can see Tim Drake maybe grabbing guns to spite someone, and I can see Thomas Drake grabbing guns because like Thomas Wayne
I
grabbing
was like, who's Thomas
guns,
Drake?
but like grabbing guns because it's what killed his family, and like he's
Mhm.
not going to see that as like power. And I guess we don't know the context of Dick Grayson. Maybe it's like All-Star Batman and Robin, where his parents just landed the trick and then were shot in the head. Like maybe
This. I did not know that.
that's what happens.
Huh.
And it's very messy and it's in front of everyone. And like Batman then immediately kidnaps him afterwards.
Okay, well, that's pretty consistent. Batman does kind of kidnap him in general.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess. That
so
after
okay, listen, original 1940s story. He does kidnap him because Dick Grayson is going to go to the police to tell them what he heard about like Boss Zuko, and then he bumps into Batman, and Batman is like, "You need to be in witness protection in my mansion."
it's just funny because like another thing is so Batman is in the audience because he's on a date with Vicky Vale slash interview. And he he literally says, I've had my eye on him for some time. And then the parents get shot.
Is All-Star Batman? Did he go shopping? Is he choosing these children?
Maybe. At the very least, I feel like Vicky Vale thinks Bruce Wayne shot them to steal.
Okay, I will say that is an Elseworld that like I would be interested in reading. Like that's an evil version of Batman that I would be interested in, right? Not a Batman that like kills people left and right, not Batman who's a complete dictator, but like a Batman who, arranges things in other people's lives to go his way. Like I think that would be a fun evil
Like
Batman.
a Batman that sees the world as his playground because he's never wanted for anything, you know?
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. Can you just imagine, right? Like he's Batman for like 2 years and then he's getting kind of bored and he's like, I need a pal. He
And then
just
he
like
like
finds a
conspires.
12-year-old.
I was thinking he conspires to make like an arch nemesis, you know? Like
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely.
like
Inspire he makes his own villains, right? But then he also chooses like his buddies.
Like I'm thinking he catches the Joker, and then he just
Yep.
still drops him in the vat. It's
It's
like,
like, let's see what happens.
yeah.
Oh my, oh my God. Batman throwing a fit, right? Just having like a full-on tantrum on a rooftop because like Catwoman's supposed to like him. Why doesn't she like him? What's wrong with her?
Ah, yeah, that's a Batman I'd read.
Can we talk about my least favorite future as a setting or fuck that future? We talk about Batman Beyond.
I'm surprised you don't like Batman Beyond. I think it's a really cool aesthetic, but
It's
continue.
a cool aesthetic, but it's like it's Batman Beyond takes sort of the premise of Batman the Animated Series and is like, what if none of it fucking mattered, right? What if at a certain point Bruce Wayne just stagnates as a human being, is really shitty to all of the characters that I actually care about, and then Gotham just gets worse. Like like that's what Batman Beyond represents to me.
I think maybe Batman Beyond should have taken place in a different city,
Yeah. No, because I don't need all of the problems of Gotham to be fixed, right? Because it is supposed to be this stand-in of like all of the worst aspects of any city. But it's I don't think it necessarily should get worse,
It's
right? Like it should ebb and flow.
it's like that issue with the recent Turf Wars like event. Is that the name of it? Or the
I
the
okay, I need
Catwoman
more to work on.
Catwoman versus Batman event.
Oh, Gotham War.
Gotham War. There it is. Where like I remember someone saying, I don't really like this plot because I don't like the conclusion being that Batman is actually like a bad force and he's just wrong, you know?
Hmm.
And that's kind of hard to say when you know the status quo is going to reset. Um, and similarly, if you have 20 years in the future, everything just fucking sucks. The implication is Batman was not only failed in improving Gotham, but like actively was a detriment to what Gotham was going to be. Either that, or he was always fighting a losing battle, and it was inevitable that Gotham would turn into even worse of a hellhole, you know?
It is so bleak. Again, I don't need every problem of Gotham to be fixed, but I need something. I need some little crumb that tells me that like these 15 characters that I know and love like did something with their lives. But I think like we're specifically talking about characterization and that's like the really, Gotham sucking. I dislike that. I dislike that it's so bleak and hopeless, right? But I think that could be salvaged if we were presented a future version of Batman that hadn't stagnated, right? Because like it's not just like a bad future for Batman, it's a Batman that like stopped emotionally progressing at a certain point and then like allowed his life to fall apart around him, but never acknowledges that his life fell apart around him.
And I think part of that is just you need to justify the next Batman not being any fucker you've heard about before, you know? And it's like, why do we need a new Batman? It's because, like, Batgirl and Robin and Nightwing just all stopped doing things. Why? Whatever, you know? I think it would have been interesting to, like, when you have the Justice League, have Nightwing be the Batman of the Justice League because you get that kind of Gotham essentialism because it's very much Batman Beyond is playing in that playground of like Batman makes Gotham a very solitary thing because he has such a connection with the city. And I think if you were to make it so it's like the reason why is because everyone just like left Gotham, Um,
Yeah.
and maybe also just like the way I think you fix it is you do that, like you have these heroes being like, I could make this choice of like, I can either leave the city, stay in the city and be fighting this losing battle and destroy my life, or I can like, I have the opportunity to like fix the world and help the world and not just Gotham, right? And then you have Batman who's like, no, I have to stay. And then you have Bruce Wayne continue staying to be Batman until like he nearly gets killed. And rather than have that happen in the past, you have that closer to the present, and then Terry can take up the mantle from there, you know?
Well, okay, so like the reason why he stops being Batman in like Batman Beyond is that I believe he shoots somebody. Like he shoots somebody and then that's like why he retires. And I think like I think that would be interesting if it was painted more as like a catalyst for his life going like downhill instead of, like you talked about the Gotham essentialism. There's also a very real like Batman essentialism in it where like it's Batman is both always right and the architect of his own despair.
But I think when we're talking about how the future, what's the word? First of all, do you have anything else you want to say about Batman Beyond?
So in Batman Beyond, we are presented like a Batman that is both the architect of his own despair and at the same time is never allowed to be wrong. And as a consequence, it takes every other sort of character that was introduced in that universe within like the Bat mythos, right? Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl, it's various rogues, right? And it gives them a future that is equally bleak, right? It gives them this idea that like because Bruce is shitty, for some reason they grew up to be isolated and shitty with each other, which again, it's this problem of like centering Batman in like these other characters' lives. And I think like that is a mischaracter I think like that's a genuine mischaracterization that really bugs me, the way that Batman gets centered in like these adaptations in other people's lives.
It's so frustrating. It's like we talked about last time with Robins, where it's like Stephanie Brown and only knows Batman through Tim Drake, but
Uh-huh.
there is no cross connection, right? That they're not actually like family connect. Like Tim Drake meets Jason Todd. First of all, Tim Drake is like a fan of the Robins. He's not a bigger fan of Robins than Batman, but then he also meets Jason Todd like way after when Jason fucking tries to kill him. Like
Yeah.
a discussion about that connection there. And similarly, it's like, no, why would Barbara Gordon have any connection to the guy she dated Nightwing ever? Like, why would we have that kind of like sort of well, they just would stop talking once they stop throwing batarangs at Bruce Wayne. That's just how it goes.
Right? Like, it is very it's very frustrating to me personally. But anyway, that's all I have to say about Batman Beyond May It Rot and Piss.
The last thing I have to say is that the I kind of hate these gap elements here where like
Mhm.
the future just stops and starts, like everything that we grow about and care about is like stops on a dime and does not move forward. And I think an issue, Batman Beyond has that issue where it's like in our comics real world, Bruce Wayne just can't stop adopting new children, right? But
Right.
in the Batman animated series, there's no Bruce Wayne. Sorry, there's not. There's no Damian Wayne. There's no Cassandra Cain. There's no like no one ever is inspired by Batman after Bruce stops carrying. Like nothing.
Yeah, no. It's like Batman the animated series ended and then Batman Beyond starts. And there's 20 years in between them that nothing apparently happened.
Yeah, and similarly, I think that one example I think that doesn't do that is the Invincible finale, which I so this is a kind of future that we haven't talked about yet, which is the flash forward, which I know you have opinions on about that.
Yes. Oh, I have many opinions. So the flash forward is, for all intents and purposes, it is the epilogue to a story. It is like generally it'll be like one issue, or sometimes it's not even a full issue. Sometimes it's like three panels. It's like one page, right? Where we have some form of time skip. And it's meant to reassure us, like, see, everyone lives happily ever after. Look, they have a house in the suburbs. Look at their beautiful children. Look at how happy everyone is now. My problem with it is that like it's very empty and superficial to me. We don't like I don't if I the comic books, right? They're serialized storytelling and sequential storytelling, right? They go on for years and years and years and years, right? If I have lived a decade in somebody's misery, then give me more than a single issue to live in their happiness. Like either don't give me it at all, right? Like just let me have the ending to the story and then I can make up my own fan fiction about what happens afterwards. Or if you the writer need to have it for such of closure, have just like a little mini story, right? Like let me live in their happiness for a little bit. And that's my problem with the flash forward.
For me, I think I have like kind of the opposite thing where it's like they act as if every plot line gets resolved, right? And that's not how it works, you know? And that's not
No.
how the comic worked out when it was running. But
Mhm.
like loose ends are a very bad narrative thing. So you have to act as if everything this character goes through, first of all that matters in however long this flash forward is either wrapping up something that happened in the story or just like lollygagging through fields, you know? Uh and this is a thing that with the Invincible finale, I think, and massive spoilers for the end of the Invincible comic, which I don't know if you care about. I'm assuming you don't.
I don't. It's been over for a while.
So the Invincible ending is important thematically because there's a question that's asked in the very beginning from Invincible's dad, Omni-Man, which is like, what will you happen in 500 years? Because Mark is essentially compared to humans immortal, and
Mhm.
that is a huge problem. And that comes up again. I when Mark meets his baby brother, who ages much quicker and is half of an alien planet that measures their lives in like months, like lives much shorter lives, right? And
Oh,
yeah, like they're
that's sad.
like I don't think they literally live a year, but they live like a fraction of human lifespans. They are two humans,
Mhm.
Arctic Ultramites, right? And that so the ending of Invincible covers those 500 years as an exercised issue of that, and it shows how Mark lives and shows that like Mark gets this kind of utopian future where not everything is perfect, but they're essentially perfect, right? Right? And like how his father was wrong, that he was able to build a future that lasted, that persevered, and in his father's way was very much in the short term, right? Uh,
Mhm.
and the other elements is there is an establishment of like new villains, right? But also the world is allowed to change, you know? Like the world explicitly changes. Like supervillains become there's some supervillains that are like, oh, it turns out if we just pay them and let them do their research, these mad scientists will like stop robbing and stuff.
Mhm.
And they'll like work for us. And then there's like characters that like meet to the next generation of heroes and stuff like that. But like the world simultaneously strikes this medium like continuing and having an ending, right? Where like
Mhm.
this, and now I'm gonna go on a slight tangent. What this reminds me of is like Avatar, where like the original series of Avatar has 3 seasons and it maps over like 6 months essentially, right?
Yes.
Uh, and then Korra maps for 4 seasons with less episodes and maps over 4 years. And like, there's one thing that happens in all of Avatar: Last Airbender, and then there's like four things that happen, or roughly more, depending on how you segment it, that happens in Legend of Korra. And
Mhm.
there's this impression that like, oh, okay, that means Korra did more stuff than Aang, but no, Aang had 6 months of things to do. Like all of Avatar: Last Airbender is essentially like one season of Korra. And similarly, there's this thing in Invincible where it's like the Viltrumites were very important for the run of the comic, which lasted like maybe a decade, I want to say. But the rest of the life exists, the rest of history exists. So this jump forward 500 years covers like so many other problems that happen, uh, which I find very interesting. So it strikes this, and like I, I don't know, maybe it's just I think an issue. What I hate is when the flash forward is the epilogue to a larger issue, you know? Then
Mhm.
you get nothing. You get absolutely nothing. But I think the entirety of the Invincible issue is just that issue, which I appreciate a whole lot. Um,
Okay,
but
like that's fair. Like you talked about like one of your problem with like with like flash forwards is that it tries to like resolve every single plot thread. And I just really fast wanted to say like that's very much I think a symptom of the nitpickiness in like geek culture. Like Because in real life, things don't always work out. You don't know how people's like stories end, right? You work at a job and then you leave the job, and you don't know if like that shitty manager got caught embezzling. You don't know if that one like coworker who's like 5 years younger than you figured out how to do their goddamn job, and it doesn't matter because you've moved on.
Like, I think what would happen, well, what I would think is good is if you kind of show that things don't resolve, you know?
I think we have talked quite a bit about the future characterizations. So I would like to close us off on like a fun little question. Rena, you have the power to take one character 20 years into the future. What ending are you giving them?
Okay, do you have any ideas? Because I'm gonna need to think on this.
Oh, okay. I am gonna take my boy, my sweet baby, my Flava Fave, Tim Drake, 20 years into the future, and I'm gonna show him that he has retired. And like personally, I think Tim Drake would absolutely thrive in academia. I think he's the right kind of idealistic, a little bit of arrogance, but like it's kind of cute, right? And this genuine desire to make the world a better place. I think he would thrive in like a think tank.
Here's the thing. I was pleading to not want to do something Green Lantern, but if you're gonna do Tim Drake, then I'm getting carte blanche to just do the same. I think John Stewart should just be an architect. All right. I'm taking him 20 years in the future. There's this utopian city that he's built the skyline of. Everything is like safe and like wonderful. And like we even have a snippet of an earthquake and literally nothing falls down. He's just like resting with a cane, looking out over the sky view of this like futuristic, super high tech city. Let's say he revitalizes the suicide slums of Metropolis. I think that's like what we would do, and it gets a new.
Oh my gosh. Because then you can have Superman throwing someone into a building and the building doesn't collapse and murder everybody.
It just bounces off and then itself. But like I want to stress that he does not become a senator. He does not lead the Green Lantern Corps. Just becomes an architect. You know.
I love that. What a peaceful Twilight years.
Yeah.
And that this has been the backup issue. Um, for everyone who's listening, we've been at this for an hour and a half, and who knows what the edited downtime will be. Um, if you would like to see that original edited in half, subscribe to a Patreon that doesn't exist. I'm Dynamite Miranda. You can catch me on TikTok. I'm your friendly neighborhood amateur Batman historian. If you are interested more into this topic, we don't talk about the future in the actual Crisis of Infinite Opinions episode, but we do talk about like characterizations and all of the various forms that they take. Um, Feel free to check out the channel if that's what you're into. Rena, would you like to plug yourself?
Hi, I'm Rena. You can find me on TikTok at RockR3. There's no S, the S was taken. You can also find me every Saturday at 9 p.m. EST at on the Ash Danger YouTube channel and Twitch channel for the Ash and the Fantastic Friends live stream. And then lastly, we do live streams together on Miranda's channel every other week. Uh, talking about comics. Specifically, we have been reading decade by decade Green Lantern and Batman, and to talk about comic trends in the industry based off of how those books evolve. Um, but yeah, thank you for watching. So, yeah.
If you are a longtime reader, feel free to drop your favorite future storylines in the comment section. If you have thoughts and opinions, feel free to let us know. Please be respectful. Um, if you're brand new to comic books, maybe check out some of the books that we mentioned here. I do like The Gift, but it's not user friendly if you haven't read a single like Bat Family comic in your life. You recommended The Green Lantern from 2016.
Yeah, Green Lantern 2016 is very great if you just haven't read anything from Simon Baz before it. But I love their dynamic, and you can trick yourself into believing they're dating when they're not, and it's so funny.
Uh, Feel free to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, hit subscribe or follow if you would like more comic book content. And as always, please support your local comic shop. They work on such tight margins.
Yeah. Uh, Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.